All right, guys. Our next lesson here is going to be about tool changer and tool changer timing. There is a very simple check that every shop should be doing on a 40 taper machine, and I don't care whose brand it is. This is just a check that needs to happen probably about every 6 months. And it's very simple. Use an aluminum block on the table. Doesn't have to be a perfect block, but it is nice and smooth. Put a solid tool holder in the spindle. Don't use one that's got a screw-on cap. It can damage the threads. So we do want that to be solid. We're going to touch off on that block. Now, if you haven't ever done it this way, I highly suggest bring the spindle down first. Until the block hits the side of the spindle, and then bring the spindle up so that you're not coming down onto your block. All right, once the block goes under, then come back down on the block in thousandths rate, very slowly. I am looking for that block to get captured by that tool. So I'm looking for a little bit of solid pressure. You might want to feel that and see what solid pressure looks like, because everybody's feel is a little bit different. It's probably a little more pressure than you thought. Yep. So it's a good clamp. All right. I'm going to set a 0 point using my operator display. So go to your position page. I'm already on the Z-axis. Push origin. Axis. Put up. Origin will zero the operator page. That has no effect on the machine. That's a digital readout for you. You can use it for anything you like. All right, I want to back up off this block. It's 100 thousandths. At 100 thousandths, I'm going to push tool release, and it should clamp my block to the table. That should be the same tension on that block as you felt a minute ago. All right, now I'm going to back up to 110. I'm going to push tool release again. My block is still a little bit tight. I should be loose at 110. Let's see how far off we are. It's 115. Now I'm loose. So the push out should be 100 to 110. If it's not, then something else is off. In our case, 5 thousandths is not a big deal. It would be like half of a shim. But let's say you're measuring 10, 20, 30 thousandths difference. That is enough to damage the double arm, cam box, or the tool changer over time. I'm sure we've all seen those machines where the tool changer, it works, but it's kind of clunky. That's part of the reason why. So now we have to determine, okay, I've got an issue. What do I need to fix? Well, most of the time there is a shim procedure for the tool release piston. Please, please, please do not go for the shims. There can be a time when we need to shim it. This is not it. Something has changed over time, and we need to determine what has changed. All right. So one of the things that will have changed is drawbar pressure. So there is a tool, drawbar force gauge, that will tell us exactly how much pressure a drawbar is capable of. In our case, we're pulling, it's like 1800 PSI. On this particular drawbar, our pressure range is 1,460 to 2,300 pounds. Nominally, these drawbars will be between 18 and 21 when they're new. So this one's at 1,800. There's not a problem with the drawbar. But let's talk about that a little bit.
Hey, Todd, real quick, what are the
Yes,
signs
sir.
if I don't have that gauge will I see anything in my part showing that I need to check that?
Yes. One of the things that you could see is part chatter. You can also see, like if you're using an end mill, that the coining on the part. An end mill, particularly because it's right-handed, tends to pull the tool toward the part, especially if there's not enough drawbar pressure. We have seen drawbars that were collapsed all the way and the tool's actually loose in the spindle. So that's an extreme case, but see that as well. The part quality problem is usually the biggest thing to see. So what I'm going to show you here is we want to head that off. We don't want to have that problem ever come about. That's why I say this is a good check about every 6 months. The drawbar has that large range where they say it's okay. Well, I don't want to ever get to 1,460 pounds. I'm reading 1,800 now. So what I would like to see, in the case of this drawbar, if it gets down, let's say around 1,700 PSI, I know something is beginning to happen with that drawbar. So this is a drawbar here, and this is a stack of Belleville washers. And as you can see, many of these are cracked and are missing pieces. Now this one is probably well below the 1,460 PSI. So that's a more extreme case here where these washers are broken. But before we ever get to that point, let's say we're at 1,700, which is perfectly fine, but something's changed because originally when the drawbar was new, it was above 1,800. So I know at least one or two of these has probably cracked. That's the time to go ahead and be scheduling service. When do you want the machine to be down? You don't want to wait until you've got bad problems and you're having to order parts. This told me I had an issue, which caused me to go for the clamp force gauge, which then told me something is beginning to change. Let's be getting a schedule. Probably you're going to need a drawbar. Drawbars they're like anything else as far as a spring goes. It has a life expectancy. And these are very tight springs, if you will. And over time, as they compress, they work hard. And as they work hard, they crack. They will break. Any more questions?
Is that something that varies machine to machine? Like if I've got 8 machines in my shop?
It can. Haas they typically run consistent with drawbars. They'll use the same drawbar in a lot of applications. There is a chart on the website that shows you the different models of machines and the different drawbars that they have. But to answer your question, yes, there's a 900 PSI drawbar. So even brand new, it's only going to read 900. So it's important that you know that about your particular machine. Use the right chart for that.
Will this be the same for an umbrella style as a side mount?
It would. So in this case, we do have a side mount tool changer, but in the case of a umbrella, which I think you have, that's going to cause even more problems because the umbrella style tool changer has an aluminum plate, and that aluminum plate over time coming in and the drawbar not pushing out the correct amount is going to cause us to push and pull more on that particular plate. I'll show you how that happens here in just a second. All right. So we know that we're okay on our drawbar. Now I'm going to tell you that we are 5 thousandths off here. And I know that I have a drawbar that is good. So the next thing I would do would be to shim the bolts on the bottom of that tool release piston up underneath. So I would be in my 100 to 110 range. We're at 115. So we would actually take one shim away. Our shims we talked about earlier are 10 thousandths each. So removing one of those shims should put me at 105 on my push out, which is acceptable. On brand new machines, this is a 2011 machine that we're working on here today. On a brand new machine, that dimension has been opened up to 80 to 130. There are several reasons for that we'll talk about when we get on to the new machine. But on this one, it's 100 to 110.
If our machine's having really hard tool changes, like first thing in the morning, does that cause this damage, or is that because of this damage?
It can cause that damage, particularly if tools are left in the spindle overnight and the tools are warm and the spindle is warm and they're allowed to cool down together. They get really tight, so the first tool change can be loud, pop. think of it like this. If you push down, the tool release piston is pushing down on that drawbar. There are a set of balls here in the bottom of this that pull on the pull stud on the bottom. Okay, and as this pulls back up, then it pulls the tool tight up into the spindle. All right, it also has to push the tool out. And if the tool is stuck in the taper because they've been allowed to cool down together, now we've got a harder time to push this out. Okay, and that's that pop that you hear first thing in the morning. Tools have been allowed to do that. Now, the other thing that can happen here, when the tool does get pushed, because we're still further up in the taper here when we push down, think of it like a pinball machine where you pull back and you release and the ball goes flying. Well, the same thing happens here. You pull on that drawbar, and then all at once it releases. The drawbar slams back up against the bottom of the tool release piston, and we can knock the little snap ring off the top of that cap, and then we got all kinds of other projects going on. All right. So shimming in our case was warranted because we knew our push out was slightly off, and we determined that our particular drawbar was still good. So if it's okay to change the shim. That's what I meant earlier. Please don't change that shim just because the push out is off, because then we get into the next section of this. We have switches on top of this tool release piston that is the timing for our tool changer. You'll remember our point here at 100 thousandths. Still have that dimension here in our control. Right back where we were. This time I'm going to end jog up 60 thousandths. And I'm going to push tool release. I'm going to take us now over to the diagnostic page. Oh, dip. There we go. On my diagnostic page, on the inputs and outputs, you will see drawbar open, drawbar closed. At 60 thousandths, when I push tool release, my drawbar open switch should change from 0 to 1. It did. I'm going to go back to the position page. I'm going to change this to 50 thousandths. Back to diagnostics, at 50 thousandths, the drawbar open should not change to a 1 when I push tool release. And it does not. If it was off, we would need to change the drawbar open switch, move it slightly in or slightly out until our 60 and 50 were correct drawbar open close. Make sense?
Yeah.
That's why push out is so critical and the drawbar is so critical. Because if the drawbar is collapsed, the switch timing is off. If my drawbar push out is off, my switch timing is off. If my switch timing is off, that is an input back to the processor that says the tool is now released. It is okay for the head to move up off the tool. If the spindle is in this double arm or not quite in this double arm where it needs to be, I push out and the switch says you're clear and the head goes up. If the drawbar is not fully released, it's going to try to take the tool with it as it goes up. This is a critical dimension. And I really think people ought to be checking it about every 6 months. And that's true of everybody's machine. I know there's lots of variations with different brands, but it's still a check that needs to happen. Just helps your attention.
So do you think most of the time when you see damage to a tool changer, whether it's a umbrella or a side mount, is it due to a switch alignment issue?
It in the later machines, they got these switches mounted solid, and so we don't have the adjustment any longer. But you're 100% correct. These machines, and particularly with the umbrella style, it's very easy to damage the tool changer this way. So I always tell folks that if I'm coming into your shop and I have a broken carousel plate on a tool changer like the one you have, the first thing I'm going to do is write down the part numbers that I need for the tool changer. That's fine, but then I got to go and search for why it broke. The plate just didn't break by itself. Something was off. 9 times out of 10, you're going to find it right here, either in this switch or in this drawbar. And those need to be addressed before we turn that tool changer or that machine back over to that customer.
If we have a shop that has a lot of water in the airlines, does that affect this system at all?
It does. Water affects everything. Houses particularly need clean, dry air. If water gets in the system, we can mess up everything from the quick exhaust valve to, I have actually seen enough water be in the system, but it's hydraulic. The drawbar, there was enough water literally inside. You can get rust on the spindle taper. There's just a number of things that go wrong there. Solenoids are the other one. The solenoids get gummed up with the wheel. They hate water in those. You will get a white corrosion powder that starts to form inside that solenoid, and that will cause also a timing issue because we have to open and close this valve on time. So, yes. Anything else?
If we have water in airlines, is there something we can do to prevent? I mean, obviously fixing the water would be the best thing, but is there a maintenance that we can do on that valve?
You can. The valve can be taken apart and cleaned, but honestly, the amount of downtime and the amount of parts, I think you're going to find that the dryer is actually a lot cheaper in the end. To go that route, we just don't want the water in the machine. There's too many other factors.
Yeah, makes sense.
All right.